So B'ezrat Hashem will continue in the Halachas of Pesach, the third lesson in Likutei Halachot. Before I continue, first of all, I just want to suggest anyone who didn't, go through the introductions. I set them up now on YouTube, so they're basically the introductions on the Likutei Moran classes. So that basically gives over and teaches this whole idea of the Aleph, which is the upper Yud and the lower Yud, and drawing down, how you draw down the light, and what the connection, the galut, the exile that we're in, between this exile, separation between the mind and the heart, which the heart is the kind of like the, in charge of all the 6 sfirot, or all of a person's midot characteristics, and taivas, lusts, all those stuff are all branch out of those 6 sfirot. So I'm just going to give a little introduction. It would be very good to hear that, because there it's more in length, and you can't really understand the way I explain this unless basically you have those introductions to understand where it all even came from and how we're connecting that. So I'll give like a little summary just as an introduction before we continue. So basically, like, we have the Torah, right? We got the Torah, 613 mitzvahs that Hashem gave us. Rav Nachman says that every single one of the letters of the Torah, like everybody knows, that there's 600,000 souls, 600,000 letters in the Torah, so every person's a specific letter. So when Adam HaRishon, right, spoke Lashon Hara, right, when God looked through the Torah, created the world, right? So the entire world is created from the Torah, and the Zohar says that that Kudsha Brichu and Hashem and Am Yisrael and the Torah and the world that was created, it's all one. It's actually all one. So when Adam HaRishon spoke bad, he ate from the tree, right, and then he spoke Lashon Hara, the main pgam was that he spoke Lashon Hara about his wife and blamed her for the eating from the tree. And basically that's when all of the letters, it's like all these souls, it says the souls just like dispersed into the entire world, they went out, and then our whole job is to elevate them and uplift these sparks. And these souls are basically, these letters are the neshamas, right? Am Yisrael going down to Egypt, the whole nation going down into Egypt. We know the Arizal says that was the whole fixing of the speech. It was fixing and elevating all the letters, all these sparks that were down in Egypt because of the blemish of the speech. So Yosef HaTzadik, right, Am Yisrael needs to go down there. So the nation of Israel down in Mitzrayim corresponds to all of these sparks of holiness that fell, all these letters that fell. And the main, that's why like the whole thing of like the destruction of the first and second temple, which correspond to our mind, right? The Beit HaMikdash is the mind. It's actually a combination of the Torah and Tefillah, the mind and the heart, because they always need to be tied together in one. So we spoke about that in length on the lesson of Torah and Tefillah. So basically the spies, for example, right? The spies spoke bad. They spoke Lashon Hara about Eretz Yisrael when they came in, and that's why that was Tisha B'Av, the night where they were crying at their tents. When the spies came back and told them the bad news, everybody was crying. That was Tisha B'Av, and God said that, that was going to be a day that was going to have, from within it, destruction, exile, right? Galut, and obviously the root of all destruction and all bad is actually all good, right? That's where all the good really comes from the bad. We can't understand that right now, but that's just the way it works. Like a friend of mine told me that Arur Haman and Baruch Mordechai is the same numerical value, right? So Haman wants to hang Mordechai on the 50th level, right? He wanted to blemish the 50th level of holiness, and he ends up getting hung on the 50th level, meaning Mordechai subdued the 50th level of holiness. That's what the tree corresponds to, that tree that was 50 amatai. Anyhow, it's a whole thing, but that's basically the way it works, the good and the bad, right? So the Torah also has from within it the good and the bad, right? Kivyachol, not bad, God forbid, right? But it has the mitzvot aseh and mitzvot lo taseh. So the shleimut, the completion, is when a person not keeps the entire Torah and never goes over anything. That's not the completion. That's not the way God created the world. God created the world in a way where He set it up in a way where we're going to fall, we're going to do sins. So he gave us that body, made the Yetzer Hara much stronger. He gave us a Yetzer Hara for the first 13 years, right? It was set up, the whole system was set up in a way that we're going to fall. And what happens when a person falls is he falls into, usually people will fall into averas, into sins, right? And then they'll fall into despair and atzvus and so on. And it's just kind of like a snowball downwards from there. But the way it's supposed to be is that as soon as a person falls, the sparks of holiness that are from within that mitzvah, right? It's a part of the Torah, it's a mitzvah from the Torah, it's a don't do, but the person fell and he did it. So all those sparks of holiness right now, they go to the other side. Now that's what's giving your entire body the strength, the strength of your physical body and your taivas and everything. They're getting their strength from all of those sparks of holiness. So the whole galut of Mitzrayim, where Am Yisrael needed to go down into Egypt, and now the nation of Israel, it corresponds to these sparks, right? These sparks, like Chazal say, that the reason why we went down is also because of the blemish of Adam Arishon, the speech, and eating from the tree, and all the sparks that fell into Egypt, and also when Avram Avinu said, Bameh daki rashena, that he had a little blemish there in faith, that Hashem told him he was going to get the land, and he asked, how am I going to know I'm going to get it? Right, so there was a little bit of a punishment there that Am Yisrael, the nation of Israel, need to go down. But what the nation of Israel in Mitzrayim corresponds to, it corresponds to those sparks of holiness that are swallowed and being swallowed from the other side, right? The evil force is swallowing them, simply because we need to, when we're in there, right, we need to be there for a certain amount of time and go through the process that we're in there, and then we need to come out and take all the sparks with us and leave that place, right? And then Yosef HaTzadik going down to Egypt before we even went, right? So that corresponds to like the tzaddik that we spoke about in length, the whole idea, the whole concept of tzaddik, which means justifying yourself and always finding your good, looking at your good. That goes on to that judgment. When a person falls into a sin and he's in a state of judgment now, where he's judging himself for the things that he did wrong, he needs to take that side of tzaddik in order to be able to hold on over there and elevate and uplift all the sparks, and not let himself fall in that state. And the only way to do it is by holding on to that tzaddik. So that's what Yosef HaTzadik corresponds, in this story of him going down to Egypt and then Am Yisrael coming, and then you have another strength called your da'at, right? Your wisdom, which is Moshe Rabbeinu, that's coming down there. And Aaron HaKohen is over there, and Aaron HaKohen we know was the leader of Am Yisrael at the time in Egypt. And then Moshe Rabbeinu comes, and he's like the da'at, right? So he corresponds to the da'at. Aaron corresponds to the mishpat. The da'at is that power that's going to come and stand before Pharaoh and do the 10 plagues, and like that's that power from within your mind that you have to mamish come out of your redemption. Right, so all of this whole process of Egypt, of us going down into Egypt, the neshamas being down there, right, and Yosef HaTzadik coming before that, and Moshe Rabbeinu, which is the da'at, and Aaron, which corresponds to the mishpat, which is always judging yourself, right, but judging yourself the right way, combining chesed and gevurah together in the judgment, right, with a lot more chesed, always mixing in a lot of chesed, always justifying yourself, which is the tzaddik, and through that, then your leader, which is Moshe Rabbeinu, your da'at, can actually take you out of Egypt. So this whole story the Torah is teaching us is basically, it's teaching us about the process that we go through every time we're in our life. We're trying to do mitzvahs, we're trying to do good, we keep falling right and left, right? So when we fall, so all those sparks of holiness from within that mitzvah go into this type of exile called Egypt. Right, and the Torah is basically teaching us the whole story and the process of how to come out of that Egypt, how to take all the sparks of holiness back from the other side, and how do we do it. So that's basically what Rav Natan is talking about here. It's based on lesson number 8 in Likutei Moharan. I started it yesterday, but it wasn't. It was kind of like rushing. I wasn't really focused. I had to go out to work. But hopefully today we'll be able to expand on it a little bit more. So starting the second chapter, so it's a third lesson, Halachas of Pesach, second chapter. Just one more thing, as I go, I'm not necessarily going to read everything word for word, so in case anybody's following with the book, they'll see that I jump around a lot, so just so you know. So we know that in Egypt, right, one of the decrees that Pharaoh made was that to throw all the firstborn boys into the Yeor, into the river, the Nile River, right? Which we said this river corresponds to like the Yeor is like the stomach of the fish that swallowed Yonah when Yonah got swallowed right into the stomach of the fish. So that's what Mitzrayim corresponds to, this big fish, right? This whale or fish, and the stomach corresponds to the Nile River, where Pharaoh commanded to throw all the Ben Zachar. So what does this mean? This means the Ben Zachar, the firstborn, the boy, corresponds to the Zikaron, and that's why he's called a Zachar. Zachar is also to say remember. In Hebrew you say Zachal, that he remembered. So Ben Zachal, meaning the main thing that Pharaoh is trying to grab you and take away from you is the Zikaron, the memory of remembering, you know, that Ruach Chaim, remembering the speaking positive and always just thinking positive and judging people favorably, and that positive speech, because the fixing of the speech is the fixing of everything. Everything. Chet Adam Arishon and the fixing of the destruction of the temple were both destroyed because of Sinat Chinam, hating for no reason. So the fixing of judging people favorably, and the most important is yourself, and always looking at yourself in a positive way and speaking good about yourself, especially in the things you fell in. Not the things you did good, okay, don't even talk about them. You mention them, you know, grab the little nikudat tovot, but you don't need to make a big deal out of them, because a person could fall into, you know, he could fall into a little bit of like arrogance and like, you know. So a person needs to, if he's in a low state, Reb Natan says in a different place, if a person's in a low place, so he needs to strengthen himself, right, by grabbing those nikudot tovot and remembering all the good things that he did, and remembering that he's still the son of the king and so on, right? But when a person's in a high state of mind and in a good space, so he needs to like, you know, yeah, he points out his good things, you know, but the main thing is just, you know, to focus on whenever he does fall, because everybody, even when a person's in a good space, he's always falling in Lashon Hara, looking at places he shouldn't look, maybe even eating things he shouldn't be eating without noticing, not saying brachas properly. There's so many details in Halacha, and again, it's all set up, Hashem set up so many details, right, in order so that we can go through this stage of falling all the time and do the process properly and elevate all the sparks and then get light from that fall. So I'm not going to go through the whole thing that we said in Torah Aleph, but like that's basically the Malchut, which is my kingdom, right? Every Jew is mamish like a king. Every person in the world is mamish, could become like a king. Different levels of kings, but you could become like you're the son of the king, which means you have the ability to reveal the kingdom of Hashem in this world. That's why you're a little world. You have like mamish like a Yud-K, Vav-K from within your body. So in order to reveal that Malchut, to reveal that kingdom, you have to receive light from the mind, which is the little soul that Hashem gave you, a part of Hashem, and it needs to come down and beam into your heart. And when it beams into your heart, then it brings peace and love and light into the entire being. And so in order to do that, the way to do that, the body, the Malchut, doesn't have any light from itself, right? That's a known thing, that the Malchut is like the moon, it has no light from itself, so it has to receive light. So the only way that it receives light is when a person falls. He falls into a sin, and then he doesn't fall into despair, he still stays happy, and he still stays the son of the king, he stays close to Hashem. And when he holds on like that, the way Yosef HaTzadik held on in Egypt, like we spoke about, and Yaakov Avinu by Lavan, and all the tests they had, right? They held on to that happiness and to that joy, even in the hardest times they went through. And through that, whenever they fell in anything, it never went to the other side. And obviously by the tzaddikim, Yosef HaTzadik, Yaakov, when they fell, we're talking about little things, because in most things they were anus, right? Yosef was in jail, so a lot of things he couldn't do, right? But for us, right, when we fall into that state, if a person can stay in that state of happiness when he falls into the sins and does things he's not supposed to do, and then he gets to elevate and uplift all the sparks of holiness, and that is the way his Malchut, his kingdom, which is his heart, is 6 Sfirot, right? That's how, the 6 Sfirot, and the Malchut is the Ikar, the main one. But that's how he draws down light from what's called, you know, the mind to the heart, from the sun to the moon. And without that, there's no way that the moon, the heart could receive that light. So this is basically the whole process. So the zikaron, right, remembering that chesed of Hashem, always speaking good, speaking positive. The speech is mamish the key to fix everything. You can fix your entire being just by speaking. And it's not just speaking, reading Tehillim and reading stuff. It's not just enough to read. You have to be judging yourself at all times, and especially when you fall into sins, you have to always judge yourself favorably. And always take the side of the tzaddik. That's the main fixing of the speech. So this corresponds, right, the zikaron, this memory corresponds to Yosef HaTzadik, because it's all about, remembering the covenant. Ikar ruach chaim ub'chinat Yosef HaTzadik, the main source of life, the wind of life, the holy wind of life that we have, which is that speech, that pure speech, is the reason why the wind of life is that speech is because that's how you draw down that wind, that light from the mind to the heart. You draw it down through the speech, so that's why it's called that speech is called the ruach chaim, the holy wind of life, and it corresponds. It's the aspect of Yosef HaTzadik, and it's the aspect of the Shmirat HaBrit, because that's what it all depends on, is remembering that covenant, because that's the whole covenant, that Hashem is there. He remembers, He looks only at that tiny little nekudat tova, that little bit of good that you did. That's all Hashem is looking at. As long as you also focus on that and you realize that that's you, that's your essence, and you're happy, you never fall from anything, that you're connected. You're holding on to the covenant with Hashem. Then it says, it says when the sons of Yaakov Avinu came from Egypt and they went back to Israel to tell Yaakov Avinu that Yosef HaTzadik is still alive, it says over there, Vatechi ruach Yaakov Avihem, that the life, the wind of life of Yaakov Avinu came back. He got back his Ruach HaKodesh, right, his prophecy. So it's meaning that connection between his mind and his heart, that light, that unification. When Yosef HaTzadik separated for him, it was gone. So Yaakov corresponds, it says in, Yaakov b'chinat klal Yisrael, Yaakov Avinu, we know the 12 tribes came out of him, the entire nation. So Yaakov Avinu corresponds to the nation of Israel. So what's this teaching us? What's the Torah teaching us? That when they came, and the sons came and they told Yaakov Avinu that Yosef HaTzadik is alive, the Torah tells us that Yaakov Avinu's wind of life, right, his holy wind of life, Ruach Chaim, came back to him. So it's saying that in order for a person, Yosef HaTzadik corresponds to that tzaddik, that one who's always justifying himself and looking at his good. Yaakov Avinu corresponds to the nation of Israel, right? So the Torah is teaching us that when Yaakov Avinu heard that Yosef HaTzadik is still alive, right? That's when he connected to that aspect of Yosef HaTzadik. When I connect to that aspect, that's when my wind of life comes back. That's when a person, mamish, could start breathing deep breaths again, right? And Egypt, basically, their whole thing in Egypt was that they were trying to hold us, they were holding us in this galut, in this exile, and taking that wind of life, right? So that's the Egypt that every person is in when he's in his dark space, and he's in his Egypt. He basically doesn't have that source of life because they're holding on to it. They're taking all of it and keeping him in his down, in his atzvus. That's why Reb Nachman talks a lot about doing all kinds of stuff that have to do with joy and happiness and dancing and doing foolish things or whatever you could do in order to be happy. It's all for this reason, that they're basically holding on to you. They're trapping you, and the only way to get out is sometimes you have to do crazy stuff, and jump around and do all kinds of crazy funny stuff just to be able to snap out of that state that you're in. So where do we draw down this wind of life? Where does a person draw down this ability to have this speech, this positive speech, and always looking at the Rav Chesed, at the mercy of Hashem, and the 13 attributes of Rachamim, and remembering that no matter how far he fell, whatever Egypt he's in, Hashem will always forgive him as long as he focuses on the little bit of good that there is from within the sin, in everything. Like even a person, let's say he's in the lust of money, right? He's chasing after money all day. Okay, so he's stuck in money 18 hours a day. His mind's thinking of money all the time. But on the other hand, he's supporting his family, he's sending his kids to school, there's all kinds of stuff that there's actual mitzvah from within it that he's doing. So with the money, like, he would focus on all the things that are around the mitzvah, the money that he's making, right? Whatever's around a mitzvah, whatever part of the money is for a mitzvah, he focuses on that. Instead of focusing on the fact that he's, wasting his life and just stuck in money all the time. And, every person has their Yehura Tshuva where he thinks, like, what am I doing with my life? I've been, okay, I'm building a business, but I've devoted my entire life to the business for the past 30 years. Like, what about living a little bit? Everybody has these thoughts, but you're in it and you're stuck, right? And you're chasing, you're running, you can't stop. So you could focus on that and go and get depressed about it, or you could focus just on the good. Just focus on the mitzvot, the good things that there are from within it. Look at it in a positive way. Focus on that, and through that you'll start drawing that life onto you, right? You'll start getting life from it, meaning it'll give you the strength to start coming out of whatever taiva, whatever thing it is that you're in, that you know that you're consumed by it. It's like the Egypt consumed us, right? You can get out of it as long as you look at it in the right way, where whatever the bad thing, whatever that Egypt is, you focus on the little bit of good that you can find from within that Egypt, and that's your main thing. That's your essence. And that's it. That's what you do, and you judge yourself favorably, and in everything, in money, in food, and whatever it is that people are having a hard time with. Every person has his stuff, right? But you always just focus on a little bit of good. So this Ruach Chaim, that a person has the ability to do what I was just saying, comes from the Da'at, right? It comes from the power of his understanding. So true Da'at is that you know that there's the oneness of Hashem in the world, right? Knowing that there's a God, there's a creator to this entire thing, and it's not just here, hanging out. It's actually, there's a God here, and he's running everything, and the entire world is being taken care of. So that's true Da'at, when a person realizes that all these twos and the separation is really all connected to that oneness. So when a person can connect to that Da'at, right, and realize everything is one, that's when he can start drawing down. So this Da'at, Reb Natan says, Hainu ma Torah. So we said that the Ruach Chaim, the source of life, comes from the Torah, which is the Da'at, right? That's what Moshe Rabbeinu came into Egypt, right, to take us out. It's like the Torah came into Egypt to take us out. So a person, by studying Torah and bringing Torah into his Da'at, he connects himself to this Ruach Chaim. But obviously you have to learn Torah in the right way. You have to learn, let's say, about the covenant that Hashem made with Avraham, Yitzchak, and Yaakov, and understand what that covenant means. Like, if you read the Pshat, it doesn't sound over there like the covenant is, that even if you do one, even if when you fall into sins, as long as you focus on one little good point and you just focus on that and be happy because of that, I'll take you out of any Egypt that you're in, right? Doesn't sound like that's the Pshat, but that's what it is. That's the Pshat over there, right? And so on. The whole story I'm giving now, right? There nothing explains about the Jews in Egypt and Yosef HaTzadik coming and Moshe, which is the Da'at, and Aaron, which is the Mishpat, the center line, and all this, right? So through this type of understanding, when a person learns the Torah and understands it in this kind of way, he can start drawing onto himself this life, bringing himself back to life, basically. Right, so the opposite of this long breath of life, when a person takes that deep breath, right, and then he just gives like a sigh and like focuses onto whatever lacking that he has in his life. And all the lackings, Reb Nachman say, come from the heart, because the heart is the headquarters of your being. So it's like whenever you do that sigh, you take a deep breath and then you take the air out with a noise like and you focus on your heart. You focus with your mind on that lacking. As you're focusing to draw it down into your heart, you can really bring yourself back to life, because the lacking from within the heart comes from a kotzer ruach, from a short breath. So when a person doesn't have the da'at, or he's not connected to the Torah in this kind of way, with this kind of understanding, so he has a shortening of a breath. He doesn't have that deep, that long breath, which is the Ruach Chaim that you can get to draw back life by looking at the Torah in the right way. So this all corresponds to dinim, right? And then judgment comes onto him. שנמשך מרב חסד, כי הפך הדינים, הפך ערך אפיים שנמשך מרב חסד, כי עיקר החסד הוא כפי שלמות הדעת.